Good afternoon, Mrs. Yuniningsih and my friend in the class 2. We are from Group 9. Will be present. Our topic is Tourism Policy Post-Pandemic COVID-19 Comparative Study between Indonesia and Brunei, Darussalam. But before we start presentation, let me introduce myself and my friend. My name is Lastiur as moderator and the first presentator. And then my friend Heni Natalia Citra Nidaul and the last Tallulah acara. Before we go to the main topic, let me to give all of you about the background our topic. Since early 2020, coronavirus disease 19 start to spread over the countries and deliver massive impact to the country around the world, like economic sector, health sector, industry sector, education sector, and tourism sector. But while COVID-19 cases start to decrease, various countries start to generate various policies to reestablish tourism sector that get affected by the pandemic. Now, presentation will be continued by my friend.
Okay, this study was conducted using the three theoretical studies, namely the first, comparative state administration, which is the study of service system and state administration using a comparative approach. This theory also includes the concept of ecological approach, which is an approach that discusses about the mutual relationship between the environment and organizations that live in the region of the country. Then the third is the study of tourism, which is various definitions such as Jackson's opinion in 1989 that tourism is invention about activity or get things that are opposite to what is usually obtained in the area of origin.
Slowly, the Indonesian tourism sector began recover after the COVID-19 pandemic. By observing the return of the tourism sector and the easing of social distancing, people began visiting Indonesian tourist destinations. There is an increase in visitors. The interest in visitors has prevented tourism growth from having profits stop, began recruiting and even creating new jobs. With this situation, the Indonesian government was optimistic about the increasing tourists and the increased foreign exchange. As an effort to restore the tourism sector, the Indonesian government established several policies in the tourism sector. The policies such as Tourism Recovery Fast, Tourism Recovery Program is used by the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, which consists of the three phases. First is emergency response phase, second is recovery phase, and the third is the new normal phase. Innovation can evaluate increase the contribution of the tourism sector by establishing a priority tourism destination in the 2022 until 2024 FHM and priority tourism 10 policy. Additional allocation of additional state budget fund for the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy to improve the tourism and creative economy sector in Indonesia. Visa on arrival policy. Making a visa when it has arrived and is free to visit foreign. Visa on arrival policy. Making a visa when it has arrived and it's free to visit foreign tourists.
Tourism Commission Brunei Darussalam, since November 2022. Brunei Darussalam has achieved controlled COVID-19 healthy status and has continued in the implementation of the pre-endemic phase since January 2022. Restriction on the tourist sector began to soften with the support of policies implemented in mandatory travel ticket for all modes of transport, mandatory visa for visit longer than 14 days, and then mandatory quarantine for tourists outside to green country list. Brunei Darussalam tourism policy after the COVID-19 pandemic. Number 1. New tour permit policy. Maximizing tourism product design in Tunda, Brunei Muara district, which has various landmarks as well as where the national capital Bandar Seri Begawan is located. Number 2. Tourist visit requirements. Proof of full vaccine as well as negative PCR test result. Using a visa or visa. Using a travel again if less than 90 days. And then self-quarantine and the use of curves. And the last one, opening the border doors. 3 categories visitors are seen. Citizens from the country on the green list are Australia, China, including Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, and Singapore. Number 2, citizens of the country are not on the green list. And then residents who have not received vaccine.
Next, we enter into a comparative study of post-COVID-19 tourism policies between Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam. In Indonesia, the ministry in charge of tourism policy is the Ministry of Tourism and the Creative Economy, which is responsible to the president. Whereas in Brunei, the ministry in charge of tourism policy is the Ministry of Resources and Tourism, which is responsible to the Sultan. Here are the conditions that must be met if we travel in Indonesia. we must have the vaccine. If we haven't been vaccinated, we will be vaccinated at the endpoints for foreign travel. Checking temperatures before entering tourist attraction, and download the Care Protect application or Peduli Lindungi in the App Store or Play Store. Meanwhile, in Brunei, we need vaccine records, PCR test, use a visa or visit visa, need to use a tour package or travel agent if it is less than 90 days, and we need to carry out self-quarantine and use COVID. Next, the policy comparisons. In Indonesia, the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy made a three-phase rescue policy as an effort to boost tourism in Indonesia. The government provided an additional state budget allocation for the Ministry of Tourism and the Creative Economy, totaling 298.5 billion rupiah. Then established a visa-free and visa on arrival. In addition, providing zero rates on hotel and restaurant taxes in 10 priority tourism destinations. Meanwhile, in Brunei, there is new tour package policy to attract domestic and foreign tourists. The policy of opening border gates for foreign tourists by stipulating three categories of visitors in the latest rules, namely citizens from countries that are included in the travel green list country, citizens from countries that are not included in the green list, and citizens who have not received vaccine. Not only that, the government of Brunei established a visa-free policy.
Thank you, Heni Widisari. So, and the conclusion our topic is the COVID pandemic has had an impact in various sectors, and which is tourism, which also has impact on the economy. For the reason, handling is needed, which of course can be different from each other. The Indonesian state itself made several efforts by using a tourism policy after the COVID-19 pandemic, like making 3 phases of saving tourism, providing additional allocation for the Ministry of Tourism state budget, and then the 10 New Bali program and the visa on arrival policy. Meanwhile, Brunei Darussalam, its government issued a new tour package policy and a policy of opening border tour to foreign travelers by establishing 3 categories of visitors. That's the presentation of our group. More and less apologize, and thank you for your attention.